So here we
Awesome.
are. Hi, Kylie.
Hello, how are you, Char?
I'm really good. I'm excited to have you here for a creative conversation. We've actually had a couple of these before. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so if anyone is meeting you for the first time, how would you if we were sitting around coffee at a cafe, how would you introduce yourself? Who are you?
Hello. Well, I'm many things, as you know, a bit multi-passionate, artist, photographer, wallpaper designer. Those are probably the first three that come to mind. Yeah.
What what brought you to this? Because I first came across your work when I saw your maps that you do, like the huge murals that are
Yeah.
maps of, I think it was the first one I saw was maybe Sydney.
Yeah.
And so it was
Yeah.
like this incredible, like not just a map, but really like hand drawn, beautiful. And I was like, oh my God, that's such a beautiful idea. Um,
Thank you.
but yeah, you've got all of these other elements. So how did you come up with that idea and how did you end up kind of being all multi-passionate like that?
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's start with maps. So I love maps. Before I was a professional artist and went full time into my art, I was a landscape architect. So I was working on projects like streetscapes and parks and plazas and, really big scale commercial stuff. And at some point I knew I always wanted to be creative. Like at school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And when I left school, I actually, what's really interesting is I I got into university, I got into Sydney University for interior design, and I got into QUT in Brisbane for landscape architecture. And it's, I always tell the story that my boyfriend at the time dumped me. And so I didn't move to Sydney to be with him. I moved to stay to close to my family in Brisbane. So that's how I ended up in landscape architecture. But I think it's quite beautiful that I've come full circle and now I'm doing interiors and I get to take all of the learnings that I've had from landscape architecture and urban design, my love of cities and planning and city shaping and how spaces work. That's where my love of maps came from.
I remember that story and I really resonated with that because originally when I came out of school, same, I was like, I don't know what I want to do. But I really like the idea of being creative, but also really practical and using both kind of sides of your brain, like the analytical
Yes.
and the creative, but together.
Yes.
And I thought that graphic design was the thing for me. Like I really, really wanted to be a graphic designer, but I remember just before going into that I met, I bumped into a mate who had actually finished his studies of graphic design a couple of years earlier. And he said every
Yeah.
single person in his year, and he went to a really good school in France, he was like, the market's so saturated, nobody is working in graphic design, nobody's got a job.
Oh,
Shit, okay. So I went and did other things and kind of, as creatives, we tend to be kind of good at lots of things, but
yeah, dabble
not
in lots
really
of things.
deeply passionate about them because it's not our jam. And
Yeah.
I ended up working in real estate.
Oh,
And
wow, that's quite a departure.
yeah, but it was just like I was kind of like just entry level in that just because it was a job that was offered to me.
Yeah.
What was really interesting is through like the plans and the interiors and all of that, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to study, not exactly sure what. And I looked at the two options that I came up with were landscape design and interior design. They're what it
Oh,
was
awesome.
interior architecture. And I remember
Awesome.
I'm going, oh, like, landscape design would be so cool, but I'd have to learn everything about plants and like,
Oh,
whoa.
yeah.
And so like in a way I was like, okay, well, I'll go the interior design route. But then same, like in my journey, like I feel like through my journey as being a business owner, I've done so much graphic design for myself,
Yeah.
clients on lots of different projects I've worked on. So I feel like
You
every
came
time
back to it anyway.
I'm living out my dream of being a graphic designer anyway, without the boring bits.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like when you're a business owner, you do have a lot of graphic design to do, and it's all the fun stuff, right? It's not the boring presentations, and the long reports and things like that. It's the best
Well,
bits.
someone that I saw recently, I think I did a project plan for something, and she looked at it and she said, "Yeah, you can see that you're an artist," because she showed me like other examples of project plans, and they were all like these really boring PDFs and like spreadsheets, and she was like, "Ah, I picked up your one. It's colorful and easy, it's so nice to read." And I was like, "It was fun to make too."
Yeah, that's beautiful. I can imagine. I can only imagine how nice yours would be in comparison to a lot of the others out there.
Oh, thanks. Well, I think that also as business owners, that probably helps us save a lot of money if we can do our own,
Yes.
like graphics design, like, maybe not all of it, but like some of the
At
basics.
least in the beginning too, right? When you're getting started and
Yeah.
you don't have the budgets for those kind of things. Yeah.
Mm,
It's such a lifesaver. And the other thing for me has been photography. So I take my own photos of my own artworks for products on my website. I take photos of my murals for marketing and for case studies on my website and for social media and stuff like that. So I feel like that's an advantage for me for sure, having that up my sleeve. Um,
yeah. Do you
yeah.
um do you do mostly interiors kind of product photography, or do you?
No, my background is actually mostly in landscape photography, as you can imagine. So I love to shoot completed landscape projects. And obviously, when I was working as a landscape architect, I was often quickly recruited, wherever I joined, to be the office photographer, and I would get sent out to photograph all the completed landscape projects for business proposals and all sorts of uses, awards, and things like that. So, yeah, but my love for photography came from travel. Both my art and my photography has all come from a love of travel and a particular time and time and place. Like I went on holidays in 2010 to San Francisco, and that was a life-changing holiday and a place that I just felt truly at home in. And I came home and I was frustrated on two sides because I didn't have any art of the city I left my heart in. And that's why I started creating a map of San Francisco, and that's how my map artworks developed. And at the same time, when I couldn't find art of San Fran to put on my wall, I thought, well, I'll print out some pictures from my travels. And I was so disappointed with everything that I'd captured. It didn't feel or look how I imagined, how I envisaged it. And so I knew that that's when I wanted to start taking photos and learning how to use a DSLR and doing
Yeah.
manual photography. So that one holiday spurred both my creative side passions that have now become my full-time thing. So it's serendipitous but amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So the
Mm.
first map with San Fran, and then what was the second one?
Well, I originally wanted San Fran for my wall. So once I finished that, I was like, oh, I printed it out in my favorite color, yellow at the time. And once I was done, it was like, oh, how nice would it be to have a series of maps on the wall? Like, so it kind of, then I had the idea that, yeah, and tr three is always a nice number, like odd numbers are always nice. So I thought, oh, I'll do three cities and I'll do the other cities I've left my heart in, which was interesting because the next one was Brisbane, which is my hometown. And then I drew New York City, which is also interesting because I'd never been there before, but I'd fallen so in love with it over the years. I hadn't been there yet, but I knew that was the other city I wanted on my wall. And of course, I have stories about when I went there for the first time, it wasn't what I expected. Um, but yeah, that kick-started me on creating all my city maps.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, it is an iconic city, so I'm sure it was.
Many other people have loved that artwork. So not just me, but it's not what I would it's yeah. It's so funny how you have your heart set on something and you have this vision of what you're going to love and sometimes it doesn't play out. I do love New York, but it wasn't my first impression wasn't as amazing as I thought it would be.
I've spoken to so many creatives about this really interesting process that is different to, when you have a strategy that's well thought out and it's kind of like you've got all these steps and it's all
What's
planned
that?
before you start. Yeah, no, I can't. Well,
No, no, I know what you mean. I try.
I've got a husband who's an engineer and he's
Oh,
incredible at that kind of stuff.
yeah.
Like he frothers over a good like Excel spreadsheet and like the whole planning and listing and all of that. Like that's his jam and he's so
Awesome.
good at it. And I just it kills me a little bit on the inside just to think about
Yeah,
because like it's so funny how the way creativity works is you start here and you think you
yeah,
can go over here and then you end up completely in a different direction.
yeah,
But it doesn't matter. Like that's actually the whole point of following that creative inspiration. And I think sometimes this is why I've had at the beginning of my business journey, I had so many issues with coaches that I worked with because they were
yeah.
kind of like, okay, we've got a 90-day plan and we're going to do this, this, this. And I would get halfway,
Yes,
so I, my heart's not in it anymore. Like I'm not really like, I'm finding that that was the inspiration, but now I'm going in this direction. And they
yeah.
actually get really upset with that because they've got their plan and they've got their ego and they're like, oh,
Yeah, this is what we're doing.
you need to
Why
get
aren't you
involved
on
that I
on this
planned.
track
You're
with
like,
the rest of us?
actually, I'm following my heart here. And it's a
Yeah,
very different process. But when we understand that process, when we actually can go from A to M and then to P and then finish back at C, like we're kind of like, oh,
yeah,
that all makes sense. But
yeah,
it's time and a whole lot of trust to,
to get
well,
there.
it takes time. And then we can look back on the process and go, oh, I can see how all the dots connect. But we often, I think, as creatives, we can get stuck if we don't trust that and we get stuck in our heads. We
Yeah,
overthink it and we doubt ourselves. Like it really all comes down to that mindset, right?
absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Everything that you've just said resonates a lot with me. Um, I can't think of a time when I've planned anything and it's gone gone to plan. Even outside of art in general life, like I tried to renovate a property that I had, and that just didn't didn't go to plan, and ended up selling and buying something else. I still have a dream of building my own home one day, but yeah, I feel like art, especially, there's so much surrender, isn't there? Like you have to just follow the pings, follow the intuitive little nudges to do this or do that or create this, create that, and see where it leads and not be too attached to the end outcome. Yeah.
That just reminds me of something that I was listening to the other day. I think it was an interview of Rick Rubin, where he was talking about like when do you know that the project's finished? And he said something like when you don't want to work on it anymore.
Oh,
Kind
that's
of
such a
like when
good
you feel
point.
like you're done, you're just like that's it. Like just send it out
Yeah.
to the world. And while you were speaking, I was like, I kind of made this connection with a conversation that I had with a friend of mine who's a healer, because that's how I mean, I've always been an artist, but it's through my healing work that I really uncovered
Yes.
that time and time again, I kept on working with all these people who were creatives and they were stuck because they weren't using their creativity. And through
Mm,
working with me, they were able to just unlock that and trust themselves and get confident and all of that. And after a while, I started to like see this pattern. I'm like, they're all creatives, all of them, even the ones who come to me and they're like, they're lawyers or accountants. And it's like, because deep down, they're creatives and they need to unlock that.
That's
Just
amazing, isn't it? That through line that you've uncovered that pattern.
yeah, it was so interesting when it suddenly like it dawned on me and it was like sometimes it's not necessarily for their career, it's for their joy and their happiness and the enjoyment of life. Like they were
Yeah.
anxiety or they had depression or they were drinking too much or smoking or whatever it was that was hindering their life. And when you go to the core of like why are they doing that? It's because they're trying to deal with the pain of not being able to create. And I was like,
Mm.
okay.
That's so powerful. I think what you do is magical in that way because you're really connecting people into their inner selves, their innermost desires, their innermost um, worries, like all of the things inside that make us us. You help them get that out onto the page or yeah, in some creative expression. That's so special.
Thank you. I
So
was just
special.
remembering this friend of mine who was a healer, and the way that she put it was, kind of when talking about a healing, she was like, well, you know that it's done, that you've done, like you can really trust that you're done with the thing because you're in that, like when we go into this healing state, it's a very like you're in a different brainwave and
Mm,
super in a flow state, but super focused. Like I find that when I'm working with someone on an energetic level, I'm so like laser focused on something. It's kind of like I'm trying to unknot something.
yeah.
And then suddenly it's done. And and the way that she described it is it's like you're super focused and then suddenly you're a little bit bored. And she was like, that's when you know that you've done what you needed to do. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
because
You've
it's
reached you've
done.
reached the
And
the
yeah,
conclusion of that.
I feel
Yeah.
like we're working very much with the same energy when we're creating something. And it's like, it's done when you're kind of like, like you can step back.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a really good point. I never thought about it. I was talking to a friend this morning about how do you know when you've done enough? And so that kind of ties in beautifully because I said to her, I don't really know sometimes where that line is, like how how far do you continue with something? So I'm going to try that. I really like that.
I think them
Try and notice that
you can only do that when you have a certain level of confidence and self-trust.
awareness. Yeah.
I was talking to someone recently, and he's an artist, and he does these really large-scale paintings. And he was saying that his dad's an artist, and
Mm.
incredible, like kind of like old school atelier, like oil painting, kind of work. And but he said like the paintings in his studio are like an inch thick because he's gone over and
Oh,
over,
wow, the layers.
and he's such a perfectionist.
Yeah.
And I was like, there is a line between like when you bring perfectionism into art, there's
Mm.
something that can end up out of balance. He's like, he's never happy with his work because he'll try and like he never lets it go. He'll
Mm.
but it was a really interesting practice that he shared with me. He'll say, like, his dad would tell him to take, like, you take a square foot on your canvas
Yeah.
and you hide everything else and you try and make that as perfect as you possibly can. So it's like the best it can be. And then you move to the next to it.
Oh, wow. That's
And
cool.
it's very cool, right? But
Yeah.
the problem with that is that when you step back and it's like, okay, that's the best now. And then you feel like you have to restart all the squares around it to make it match.
Yeah. And what if each square doesn't feel like the same level of, you know, what if the level or the energy of each one doesn't match each other? I don't know. That feels so strange.
Well, that's where I think like there was this disconnect between the vibrational energetic quality of the art and
Mm.
the mastery of the technique
Mm.
because they're like both need to go hand in hand, right?
Yeah.
It's not the perfection that people are drawn to, it's the energy of it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it seemed like well, hopefully the sun is doing things differently. He's doing things a lot more intuitively and like
Bit more fluid.
into that surrender and
Yeah.
it works amazing. It's beautiful and you can feel the emotion in it. I'm like, cool.
It's
This
funny that you brought that up because I was thinking about when I create my maps, I actually start thinking about them as a whole, like obviously from a, a visual and balance perspective of land, water, roads. So when I'm thinking about how it kind of balances on the page, what it's going to feel like, but when it comes down to drawing, I do take a kind of that square by square approach where I'm tracing the roads or the waterways, and it becomes it's almost I actually have some screenshots where I've captured the artwork as I've gone, and it literally is square, 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 square until it comes a whole again, and then I have to piece it together and figure out what doesn't where I've put more energy into other areas and where it's not feeling right. And then I have to go through and play with line weights and colors and like I kind of go back to that whole holistic view again. So it's really fascinating that you mentioned that. I feel like you can't end on looking at the detail. Like you have to look back at the whole.
Mm.
But yeah, it's interesting. And then in the perfectionist thing, because a lot of my maps, I mean, that's how I started my artworks. My artworks have evolved into much more plant-based things as well. Again, also kind of tied back to my landscape days. But when I'm create, obviously a map is kind of much more structured than when I'm creating from scratch of a botanical thing. Um, but when I do the maps, I started to feel like they were too perfect. Like they were coming, and then I was trying to figure out how I could incorporate my own messiness or my own love of color, and it ended up being that I ended up painting watercolors and merging them with my digital artwork. So I got to a stage with the maps, I guess, where I was bored and I was like they were too perfect, and I wanted them to be more playful, more artful, more yeah, a bit more whimsical. So that's where the watercolor came in. And now I feel like I'm a bit of a mixed media approach. So it's been an interesting journey. Yeah, I get bored with just the plain maps. So anything I can do to incorporate. And this year I'm dreaming of like how can I take them to the next level? Would I incorporate my photography? There's another when I was in school, I learned this art form called art in bark, which is where you take layers of beautiful layers of bark, obviously collected and foraged on the ground, not from the tree itself. But you take the beautiful layers of bark and you can overlay them. And I was wondering whether I would scan them or whether I would glue them, and how I might merge landscape elements from places into my maps. So that's
It really resonates because I'm just remembering
yeah,
I went
exciting.
I went on a trip to the south of WA. So I lived in Perth for years. Like that's been since I moved to Australia, I've mostly lived in Perth. And we took a trip down south, so kind of, very southwest. And there are
Beautiful down there.
incredible forests. And I walked around this forest, and I think like my husband, my friends probably thought I was nuts because I was taking photos of the bark. And I was like, I'm
We
going
need to go on holidays together.
with this someday. Like it was just so beautiful. And I was like, I don't know what, but it's just like I just wanted to capture all of it. Like it's so like layered and
Yeah,
there's something so incredible about it. So I
yeah.
love where you're going with that idea.
Yeah, you're the first person I've told. I've been thinking about this for the last few weeks and I was like, I don't quite know how it's going to come together yet, but the fact that the ideas are there is like half the battle. Like like that's I've kickstarted things now, so it'll evolve in it as in its natural way as we were
Yeah.
chatting about. I have to be detached from what the outcome might be.
These ideas, like they take a lot of time to actually, like I
Yeah.
have this all the time. Like I'll create something and then I think back and I'm I've been sitting with this idea for sometimes like 10, 15 years. Like it's been
Yeah.
in my mind of like
Brewing.
image and it's brewing and like coming together with all these different ideas and then it comes and it becomes something.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few drawings that I have here that I'm like I've made them and people think that that's the final piece and I'm like
Oh,
that's
it's
my
the
draft.
start of it.
I don't know what the final one is going to be, but this is very much the draft and it's going to like, I'm going to
Evolve.
like work on it and then I know what the final one looks like, but there's a bit of work in between.
Oh, that's
Um,
cool. Yeah.
Tell me about, so crack me up. You did tell me that you had been to Japan on holiday and I wore my kimono today, but
I
not
know it's perfect. It's divine
like the what?
outfit choice.
I just got out of the shower and I was like, I want to wear my kimono.
I love it. It's beautiful.
I could feel your Japanesey
I should
vibe.
have put mine on. So yeah, the other version of a kimono is I'll probably say this wrong, yukata, and it's like the light cotton version. So I got one of those when I was in Japan, and I felt so creative in it. I can't wait to swan around the house in my yukata. And when I first wore it, it was in a hotel that was their hotel, like it came fresh in the room every day and with little slippers and you could wear it. And I loved it so much that I bought one to bring home. So yeah, I'm really excited to do some creating in that.
So what did you do during this trip? What did you get up to? Other than like
Oh,
hotel rooms and slippers?
yeah. Oh, and in every hotel room, touching all the wallpaper, looking at all the artworks, as you know. I did photograph some bark. I did photograph lots of plants. Yeah. No, we went to Tokyo first for 8 days, then up into the mountains to Hakone. That's about 2 hours away, up into the mountains for 2 days, 3 days, and then down to Kyoto for another 8 days and back to Tokyo and home again. So it was about 3 weeks in total, and it was just heaven. It was just lots of beautiful temples and shrines and landscapes and exploring on foot, lots of walking, lots of galleries, lots of photography. I dragged my camera everywhere, even though it's heavy. So yeah, it was beautiful. It was just so, and lots of good food and shopping, just all the things.
Do you have a highlight of your trip or a particular place?
Mm. Well, one of my favorite trees is the ginkgo tree. And every year, there's only really one, there's a couple in Brisbane that I know of, but there's one that I love up in Toowoomba where I grew up, where I was born. And every winter I'll make the trip to go see this ginkgo tree. And I have to I have to time it. You know, it's only a short window when the yellow leaves really come into their full expression, and then they're gone. And so I will often get my family members, although they're terrible, I can't rely on them. I'll send them out and they'll be like, "Oh, I forgot to check your tree." So I don't know, I have to kind of time my trips, but with Tokyo, I discovered that they have ginkgos everywhere. It's like their street tree of choice. So there will be just beautiful avenues and lines of ginkgo trees, and then in the parks. So we were, and then Kyoto was, we discovered like a city of maples. So between the city of ginkgos and maples, we timed it perfectly for both, which was incredible. So I just
I need to take
um
notes here. I'm actually taking notes because like that's on Japan
yeah.
is a destination I want to go, but particularly with my brother.
Oh,
Yeah, he's always been really into different Asian cultures, like since we were kids. And I've got a few things around my house and even postcards that I
he would
remember
love it.
buying when we were like 12, and they're Japanese. I've got them all around my studio. They're Japanese words, um,
Cute.
just the symbols. And he actually bought me this kimono.
Oh, well, you have to take him. He would love it. So
Yeah,
we went at the end of November.
end of November.
So I mean, it does change every year. There is a Japan is amazing at putting out like their autumn leaf foliage maps. They'll put out maps and they'll update it very regularly of what's I was going to say blooming, but that's not the right, what colors are where. But yeah, at the end of November was perfect for ginkgos in Tokyo, and the beginning of December was perfect in Kyoto for maples. So,
Beautiful.
um, yeah.
I was recently working on a project. It was like a branding project, and I was doing a lot of a painting of cherry blossoms. And so I
Oh,
did
cool.
that research into it, and it amazed me that there's actually a word in what it amazed me. No, I love hearing like these different concepts and words that we have in different languages to
Yeah.
explain like a particular thing that's important in that culture. And
Yeah.
there's a word for like, you know how in Australia we've got like barbecuing. Have a word for having a picnic under the cherry blossom trees.
They do. I've forgotten the name of that word. Do
Yeah.
you remember it?
I wrote it down somewhere because I
Oh,
did
it's
a
so
bunch of
beautiful.
research on it, but it was so amazing like how, you know, you can't technically book your spot, but it's
No,
common for them to send one family member with a
to
big
save.
blanket to sit there all day and
Yes.
everyone like
What we do for New Year's Eve fireworks, they do for their cherry blossoms. It's incredible. I would love to go there for that season. And the other thing to note about cherry blossoms I learned in Japan is there's actually some cherry blossoms have two flowering seasons. So
Yeah.
we actually saw some cherry blossoms. Oh my
What was
gosh.
that?
What did I do? How did I get balloons to go up?
That
What
was
was
a
I?
celebration.
That's how excited I am. Yeah, so there, yeah, there's two flowering seasons for cherry blossoms, which is really cool. So we got to see some when we were over there. And I can't remember when they are, but yeah, you don't necessarily have to go in March, April
Yeah,
to
cool.
see them,
I
which is
think
really
it's
cool.
the same with ornamental plums. So when I
Oh,
first moved to Australia, the house where my now husband was living, just outside his door was this ornamental plum that's similar. The flowers are very similar to cherry blossoms, but
yes.
the tree when it's not flowering is like it's gnarly and like it's just it's not. I wouldn't say it's ugly, but it's not like it's not pretty. It's yeah, it's just
Yeah.
it's dark
You
and it's
wouldn't pick it, would you? I've
yeah,
seen
you
them.
kind of don't really notice it. And then suddenly it's like covered in pink. And I
Wow.
remember that at the time I made a mental note. I was like, oh, okay, like the blossoming season's around then. And it's so
Yeah.
beautiful that I was like, it's totally worth waiting a whole year for that to happen again. But it
Yeah.
actually happened. I'm pretty sure there were two seasons because I was quite surprised that I was like, oh, that sure, we didn't wait that long for that second one.
Yeah. I
That
was
makes
surprised
sense,
too.
you know.
It's very cool. I think you'll love it. I'd highly recommend Japan. It was so beautiful. People are amazing.
Yeah, I think well the last where I got this kimono I was traveling to France this year and I did an exhibition there and I saw my family for the first time in years and
Yeah.
like it was just like with the whole like lockdowns and all of that it was always complicated. Then we moved house for a bit and it ended up being like 6 years since I went back.
Yeah.
And so I went back to the city where I mostly grew up in for many years in my kind of like once I left my parents' home, I lived
Mm.
in between Dijon and Paris.
Mm.
And in Dijon is where I did the exhibition this year. And my one of my
Awesome.
brothers lives there, and another brother who lives near Germany came down, and he's the one who's really into Japanese culture. And there's a particular shop in this town that when I was living there, it was already the case. Like I would walk past and it was always closed.
Oh,
Not because like it was shut or closing down. It was just the shop owner had these really weird opening hours.
okay.
Opening hours in France are quite different to Australia, but they're quite standard across the board. Like most shops are pretty much the same. They do
Yeah.
close for lunch.
Yeah.
Like most shops will close during
That's
lunch.
so nice. It's midday siesta.
Um, but yeah, this particular shop, I would go. Like on a Tuesday morning, it's closed. On a Thursday morning, it opens only between 10 and 11:30. And then it's like really random hours, but they're listed at
Wow.
the door and
It's okay. So it's still
there, but
got
it's just
it's
very strange. And I always missed out going into this shop. And when I was there with my brother, I was like, I need to go in this shop.
it's my
He was
mission.
like, okay,
Yeah.
well, let's make this little mental note. Let's make an appointment with ourselves tomorrow morning. We're going to do that. It opens at 10.
Yeah.
We'll be here. It was a Thursday. We'll go in at 10.
And was it open?
And so we did. We went, and there was so many things, and I found like things that I'd been looking for quite a while. We got some,
Wow.
yeah, fun things, incense, and we got these matching ceramic little cups, which
That's
is good.
adorable.
And I got this
How
kimono.
special.
I
Oh, that's from the shop. Oh, how
yeah,
special.
and every time I wear it, it's set like what I took away from those like really weird opening hours is this impeccable and beautiful boundaries that
Mm,
this business owner had on like they really had their business to serve them rather than
yes.
just be there and open to anyone. It's like this is what works for me.
Mm,
And if you want it enough, you will come within these hours.
yeah.
Their shop was beautiful, customer service was excellent, like, pristine, beautiful
Yeah.
experience. But yeah, when I have days where I'm like, okay, this is a day where my energy is sacred, and I put on my kimono, and I'm like, ah,
Oh, wow. It's almost like that energy, you've carried that energy back with you to the
yeah.
kimono.
Well, I think everything that I own and that I have in my studio, and kind of most of the things that I use in my house, obviously, we're a family of four, and we've got a dog, and there are, there's stuff in your house that's just
Yeah.
stuff that you have as
Stuff.
family. But my personal possessions and like my studio is filled with things that to me are like deeply meaningful. Like I don't really
Mm,
have stuff that's just stuff. It's
mm.
always symbolic of something and it's very well curated because I think it's important. Like it,
It is important. That's essential, I think. I'm exactly the same. And a big part of why I love traveling is so that I can bring those things home
mm,
that feel essential, like they're the essence of me,
yeah.
from picked up from all around the world. And they may not be my, I've borrowed that culture, I've borrowed that thought or that artful thing, but yeah, it's so special to have it at home. And I think that's why I really wanted to start my own business, really, because when I couldn't find that artwork of the city that I left my heart in, it was just, I couldn't, it was so important to me that I had something from that place that made me feel how I felt when I was there.
Mm.
And I think ever since then, I've made it my mission. I very rarely buy things, you know, from around, Brisbane, like or around home. It's always on my travels. And even if that's just a little weekend away and I've stumbled up to Mullaney or Montville or down the coast, I love to go to like Casuarina, and it's usually a little homeware shop there or a little boutique, and I love handmade things. I love people things that people have poured their heart and soul and time into. I think you'll love Japan because it's full of that actually. Like everything there is so artful, so mindfully curated, so beautifully put together. The packaging, like the graphic design, and the packaging is just so beautiful. Um, Everything there is so intentionally
Mm,
created and thought about, mindful. I came home and I wanted to only have the most beautiful things in my space that reminded me of my, like either my happiest moments or that were I felt like were essential, like, and the essence of me. And yeah,
yeah,
it's a good thing to fill your home with those things.
there's a word for that in Greek. They call that meraki. It's
Oh, I
the
didn't
essence
know
of
that.
yourself that you pour into your work.
Oh,
And I
wow.
feel like that's something that we connect to with other people's creations.
Gonna
It's
write that
the
down.
essence of them, but it brings us back to the essence of ourselves.
Mm,
I think that's the magic of art that and handmade and intentional pieces that you don't find in mass produced.
yeah.
Honestly, when we look at the world, a lot of this consumerism that basically comes from us feeling that we're not enough and we don't have enough and all the FOMO and all of that that's like
Yeah.
conditioned into us.
Yeah.
If we got rid of that, I mean, the planet would be in such a better state because we wouldn't be destroying, like mass producing and, instead of having like 25,000 pieces of things that just go into the bin, we would be a lot
Yeah.
more intentional and curated. And that's
Yeah.
something I've been working on this for years, but that's the kind of life that I want to lead. And I'm
Mm,
not there yet because I've got small kids and we're kind of at different stages of life and it's a bit more complicated than
yeah.
which ideally was to, oh, I have these handmade ceramic mugs.
Oh, they're
I've,
gorgeous.
I've got one of my clients who makes these for me, and she makes them when I do coaching or mentoring. I send a gift box to my clients, and they have all these different tools that are really like they're all very intentional, handcrafted, either by me or by someone that I know that's a ritual based. So this is for cacao. I'll send them cacao. I'll send them incense that's
Mm.
handmade and all of that. And I was telling my husband because he's very practical, and he was like, "These get hot and blah blah blah," and that's not true. That's just in your mind. Like that's
Yeah.
not a thing. But I was telling him like I want to have like handcrafted ceramic like bowls and this and that and he was kind of like I know that he's right there with me, but it was
Yeah.
a kind of like okay. Because we've been talking about this for years and it's not you can't do that when you have toddlers around the house. But they
No.
a stage
You
where I want to be investing in less but better. And
Yeah.
this was actually the slogan of my first business. I did um,
What
keep.
was your first business?
I did. Well, it started off with me making personalized name frames.
Yes.
And you know how like when you're doing technical drawing, you do a lot of like lines.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't know what it's called in English because I did my studies in French, but I was really good at the grading.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what I actually did was these designs of name frames that, it's very much what I do with my portraits, but kind of like same, but different.
Yeah.
It was instead of having these really ugly baby name frames that were like, Disney colors and stuff, I was like, yeah, they were very like monochrome. But I'd make a name frame that was like a design that didn't actually look like a name frame. So it was in a round
Oh,
design.
wow.
All the letters were kind of, it's difficult to explain, but
You'll have to show me later. That sounds fabulous.
and I did, and I filled in these letters with like really, really straight lines to the point that I remember posting at the very beginning of this, I posted online a picture and someone thought it was a close-up of linen fabric.
Oh, wow.
These
With all
lines.
the pattern in
Yeah.
the material. Oh my
Yeah. And I,
goodness.
I got so good at doing these straight lines that I actually had to like intentionally make them a little bit wobbly.
Yeah.
But they had that kind
Had
of fun because so they didn't look like they'd been drawn. Anyway, so I started with that and then, going back to that kind of analytical mind, needing to support my family, I went more kind of into product design and I started making baby blocks out of wood. I made height
Oh,
chart
wow.
toy boxes,
Yeah.
and my slogan was less things, more meaning.
I love that. That's really
We
cool.
still have this wooden height chart that's got my family name, or my husband.
Yeah.
I actually didn't take my husband's name, so it's
Yeah.
our kids at different ages and some of their
Yeah.
friends and family members, all on this height chart.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. And the idea is that if you move, because I moved around a lot in my life, if you move,
Yeah.
take it with
You
you.
can take it with you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really lovely. It's interesting hearing your some of it more background around your art because I didn't know how you started. And it all kind of ties together really beautifully, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
All very tactile.
with the watercolor portraits that I do, it's all with the same intention. It's like showing someone their individuality
Mm,
and yeah, not making something that's mass produced or printed to death, but something really, really unique that's empowering.
yeah.
And that was always, I think, well, it's always been the intention, but I do that in many, many ways.
Yeah.
Even with the textile artwork that I do. That we talked about the trees in Brisbane. When I started this one after being in Brisbane for a conference, and I intentionally booked a hotel right next to the botanical gardens.
Oh, excellent. So that you could go wander through there while you were
Yeah,
creating
every
it.
morning I'd get up super early and go at sunrise and walk through the botanical gardens. And, it's ancient and beautiful. And I think on the second day of the conference, maybe even on the first day, there was an elder who came and spoke a bit about the land and how Brisbane was formed. And I
Mm,
remember them giving some really meaningful information about the botanical gardens and how important those were.
yeah.
And I was like, yes, good choice.
Oh,
Like,
that's
but
so
not
that
like being in
gone
the
full
city
circle.
was not, it didn't seem like a fun place for me to be for 3, 4 days. So I was like, I'll go there and I'll just like get an Uber into this. Well, it's still the city, but it's not,
Yeah.
at least I had access to nature.
Yeah. It's those little pockets are so special. I feel like Brisbane could use a few more. Japan has some amazing inner city parks and tiny pockets of nature which were beautiful. Actually, I think that's one of the things I love about living in the city is finding those little hidden gems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they are in every city. If you go
Yeah,
look,
they're there.
I've just remembered this place in Paris that an ex-partner took me to, and it was He's actually the person who bought me my very first watercolor set because watercolor was really not
Oh,
a medium. I was studying interior architecture at the time, and there were some of
yeah,
these drawings that I needed to do.
yeah.
And he bought me this travel set. It's about that big, but it's got heaps of colors. But he found this like tiny little shop in Paris, which is like it's an artist shop and it's in this like semi basement. You have to know it's there. Otherwise you can
You
easily
would
miss.
dismiss it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he went there and he asked the guy in the shop, like, I don't know anything about art, but he spoke about me and he was like, this is my intention. I want to create something that she can carry easily,
Yeah.
and the guy said, look, this is what everybody buys. They think it's the best, but this is what I use. And I'm a watercolor
Oh.
artist and I love this brand. And it was incredible. And he bought me this little thing that I still have. My kids have kind of destroyed it with these epic watercolor colors. And I often think about that because I was like, it's that set that got me into doing some of the art that I do today.
Yeah.
But on that particular trip where he took me back to this shop to show me,
Where it came from.
yeah, we went around and well, he grew up in Paris. And so he showed me all of these little parks and his favorite places that are not the
Yeah.
touristy ones. They're more,
Yeah.
but they're
Obscure.
food.
They're the best ones, don't you think?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. Next time I go to Paris, I'm going to hit you up for all the special spots. That sounds
Yeah,
fabulous.
I need to go and remember where that was because I definitely want to go back there next time I'm in Paris too.
Oh, how beautiful. The last time I was in London, there was a park that I found because when I'm creating creating my maps, I'm often spending a lot of time on like online looking at Street View as well. I can't help myself because I need to know, I kind of want to know how things look. Like I'm imagining how they are when I'm drawing the lines.
Yeah.
Um, and I must have dropped myself somewhere obscure in Google Maps one day and before when we were researching our trip. And this was 2019 we went and they the like I landed in this tiny park that was kind of like an old church, and the church had obviously like it was ancient and the roof had long gone, and you could just see the walls and the structure, and then the garden was filled in all around it, and it was so beautiful. And when we added it to our itinerary, not knowing much about it, and when we got there and had it all to ourselves and how special it was just the best
Oh,
feeling.
I'll hit you up for that as well.
Yeah. So beautiful.
So tell me, we're just at the beginning of 2025.
Yeah.
What are you working on this year? What's your big creative vision for yourself and your business?
I was just saying to another art friend this morning, I don't feel like I've quite I haven't pinned down anything yet. Only because I kind of want to give myself the freedom and the time to think and dream a little. I know a lot of people go into a new year with their resolutions and their goals, but I like to kind of feel it out through the first probably January. I have a yoga teacher actually. She claims that the year doesn't really start until Chinese New Year. So I always feel like January is like this beautiful time to just dream and scheme and imagine. So I don't have any grand plans, but I do have some projects that are currently um, some projects that are continuing, like some big ones happening this year, which are really exciting, and then a couple that are in talks sort of at the moment. So um, those things they kind of feel like, I'm already committed to them and I'm excited about them. And they are all murals. So I think this will be another big year of murals, which I'm excited about because it just brings me so much joy to create art on that scale and for more people. And the murals that I'll be doing will be impacting. The murals I've done in the past have been amazing, and some of them have been in um, workplaces, and some of them have been in private homes, and they haven't, I've often thought that sometimes my murals aren't seen by a lot of people because they're
Because
interior.
there are more eyes on them.
Yeah, they're not like public street art murals where you kind of walk past them every day. There's really only one mural I've done that I can think of. You can see from the out the wall, the inside wall from the outside.
I remember
But this
seeing that on your
this
social.
yeah, this year will be the first year that I feel like my murals will have a huge impact uh, for more people, which makes me really happy. So some of them are like there's two massive murals I'm working on for towers in Brisbane in the main kind of valley area. So knowing that those murals will be seen and enjoyed by hundreds of people in the building just makes me feel amazing. And one of those murals is going to be my physically the biggest mural I've ever done, which will be 6 meters high, about 6 meters high, which I think is about the maximum I can go to with my murals being wallpaper. So that's exciting. And another one that's in talks that may or may not come to fruition, fingers crossed, is a daycare center. So, and I hadn't really thought about doing art for littlies. I don't have kids of my own yet, or I don't know if we will, but yeah, like the thought of it going into a space like that makes me really happy. So
Amazing.
yeah, aside from those projects that are kind of that I'm excited that are in fruition, coming to fruition already, I really want to create I really want to pour a lot of love and energy into my website this year.
Mhm.
I've kind of neglected it in the past, and I really want to make a home for my murals, somewhere that I can share the work that I've already done for other people to purchase. And also, I want to get into those other kind of art techniques that I mentioned, like the art and the bark and the watercolor, maybe even acrylics. And photography. I kind of want to play with the murals and the artworks that I already create, but with the different techniques. So yeah, I think like that's plenty for me to to start with anyway.
Awesome. I'll be holding that vision for you.
Thank you.
But yeah, I really get it. I only really start the new year with the astrological new year because that's
Yeah,
what it
it
feels.
feels good.
And also, like when I work with clients, I'll always tell them like pay more attention to your birthday,
Mm,
the actual like end of year, because that's your new year, and all that matters.
yes.
Like, it's not what the rest of the world is doing. And anyway, like the calendar that we follow is like it's the Gregorian
It's
calendar. It's only been around
yeah.
a short amount of time, but the
Yeah.
cycles of nature have always been there, and the cosmos and all of that. So, and
Yeah.
aligned to our own cycle, that's so much more potent to work with because it feels aligned.
Mm.
I made my own lunar calendar this year because
Did you?
I've been working with the energy of the moon for years, and I
Oh, I'd
always
love to see it.
let me see if I've got it on my wall. So this is a printout. It's one of my portraits, but it's got all of the lunar
Oh, the dates all
and it's
organized. I
new
love that.
snake. So that's where that comes from. But I always wanted this
Beautiful.
kind of like cheat sheet to be able to. I used to do a lot of events around the full moon. Well, I still do.
Yeah.
But I needed to just have like just look quickly and go, that's the date of the next full moon, or when someone says there's a party or this or that, I can kind of have a look and kind of know as a woman and as like tapping into my feminine energy, I can get a bit of an insight into how I'm going to be feeling. Am I going to be wanting to
Do I want to go or not?
feel
Yeah.
sexual, or am I going to feel like I just don't
Is
want to
it a hell yes or hell no? That's
yeah,
right. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I made it for
having
me,
those
but yeah, it was really
good.
exciting to put it out there. Like I've been thinking about this for years, and this year was the first one that I actually had it ready for the beginning of the year.
Oh, well done. That's gorgeous. I've always wanted to create a diary for myself and fill it with some of my hand lettering. I do a bit of hand lettering. I'd say line art, watercolor, and hand lettering are my biggest areas, but every time I sit down to create one, I realize how much work it is. I love the idea and the simplicity of your one pager calendar. That's so much better, I think, to focus on. But yeah, having those dates is important because I always love to use those new moons as an opportunity to reset and refocus for the month ahead. And then of course later in the month you can release everything that's not working. So I might have to see if I can get a copy of that one.
It's a downloadable, so you can, yeah,
Oh, that's so
I
special.
wanted to make it easy for people to do because I think that as women, when we start to work very intentionally with the cycles, like,
Mm,
and we take stock, like it's just really the practice of reflecting and
yeah,
just asking yourself, well, what's working, what's not, instead of just doing, and you
rolling
people
through.
and they're like, oh yeah, I'm good, same old, same old. And you're like, really?
Yeah,
Like,
I know.
I've gone through so many different identities since the last time I saw you 3 weeks ago. I'm like, whoa, I'm a whole different person.
I love that. Yeah, I'm much more aligned with you, I think. I was reflecting on the fact that the friend I saw this artist friend I saw this morning, we have and I call it a ritual because I'm not really good with the word routine. I'm not very good with anything that feels too structured and logical. But yeah, ritual of catching up every Monday morning for a walk and a chat and a coffee chat about art and life. And I realized how much I have to tell her every single week. There's so much going on up here. And then creatively, yeah, she must. I used to think I was crazy, but now I just think it's a beautiful thing to have, you know, so much to be excited about and passionate about.
Yeah, and it's great to have that outlet, like to have someone to bounce those ideas off or just to like get them out of your head and
Yeah,
just have those routines and those creative practices to explore and play. And
yeah,
I think it makes us happier and live longer. So
yeah, absolutely.
it was so nice chatting with you today, Kylie. And
Yeah, thank you for having me on. It was excellent. It was great to
I'm
see your face again.
I'm sure we will talk again very soon.
Yes.
So talking about this website, would you be comfortable with me putting a link to the website
Oh, yeah, of
or
course.
leave
Go for
maybe
it.
socials? If someone was like, "Oh, I really want to see these things that she's," what's the best way to find you?
Yeah, please do. So my website is www.tinygiraffe.co.co. And I think Instagram is the same, tinygiraffe.co. I've tried to make it easy for people. So
Yeah.
you can find me there.
Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks. Great to see you. Have a beautiful year.